Welcome to Corner Cafe.
About the things.
And welcome to Corner Cafe. It's a joy to have you with us here at the cafe. And I am, joyful because I have my friend, Darla Rae. She is a film director and producer back on the show. Welcome to Corner Cafe.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I really been looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to catching up with you. We saw each other recently and I know you're always up to so many good things. What is a new project that you're working on right now?
Well, as most people don't realize, we spend most of our time working on funding. So I have actually two projects. I have a Christmas project called Chili for Christmas, based on real life events that happened in 1992 that I experienced personally. And then I'm working on a documentary, Queen of Hockey, about a woman who changed the game of NHL hockey forever. And most people don't know her name.
Wow. What's her name?
Laura Stam. She was a pro skater, ice skater. She always wanted to play hockey, but girls weren't playing hockey back in the day. And so she was kind of instrumental in changing the lives of many NHL Stanley Cup winners. And I've had the opportunity to interview a few of them, and we still have a lot more to go, but it's an exciting project.
Sounds exciting. And how did you learn about this story, Darla Rae?
Well, as things happen, I met her son on an airplane coming back from Boston to Denver. And I just overheard him say that he was looking for a filmmaker. So I figured I thought, I've watched enough movies on this plane, so I'll just say, why do you need a filmmaker? And so he asked me, he said, why, are you one? And I said, yes. No, he said, do you know one? I said, well, I am one. And he said, oh, wait, let me go get my card. And then so we started talking, and then he brought me all of his mother's stuff. And it's been very interesting project as far as research and just going through her journals from 1971 for 40 years. She was doing this, and long before Title IX, where in sports, where women had opportunities, she was kind of a trailblazer.
Wow. Well, I know you believe that was a definite divine connection right there, as we know that.
Yeah, it was definitely a God thing. Because, God, that's how it happens for me. Things come out of left field. And this one was 35,000 feet in the air, so it's quite remarkable, actually.
Yeah, that is amazing. And Darla, for our listeners who aren't familiar with some of your past projects, can you name a few?
Yes, Courageous Warriors, Beauty from the Ashes is a documentary, breast cancer survivors and their caregivers telling their story, and that's available on several platforms. It's on Tubi, it's on Plex, it's on Amazon. I don't know, I think it's YouTube TV and Apple TV and things. So it's, it's been about, it's almost 2025, so it came out in 2022. And we're still getting letters from people saying, thanking us for making the film, and that it gave them information or inspiration for their own individual battles. And so it's a rewarding film for sure. And then Spirit of Love, the Mike Glenn story, is about he's a NBA basketball legend, started the nation's first basketball camp for deaf and hard of hearing kids. And that film's also available out there still. It's been out since 2013. But we still get really... it's rewarding to hear people talk about your work and how it affects them.
Right.
And, that's kind of why we do the kind of stories that we do.
Right. Yeah. You have these stories that are really life-changing, epic type stories that you are able to come across and be able to tell. Now, many people are like, wow, so exciting, movies, filmmaking. But what is the challenges that you faced in doing what you do? Although very fun, although very rewarding, there are some challenges.
Well, it's always about raising the funds, honestly. And, whether you have to knock on doors for product placement, and most people say, what's product placement? You know, that's where you see Coca-Cola or some other product in a film being in the film. And then there's brand integration, which you don't see the product in there, but maybe the message of that company lines up with the message of your film. So we're always looking for those options and opportunities where we can align ourselves with a product that drives home the message of the film. So really, I spend probably way more time raising the funds than I do making the film. And so that's really the most complicated thing. And I think the other thing would be, we make films that are emotional, very emotional. And in the case of documentaries, sometimes it's very emotionally taxing because you get very connected to the people, the real life people.
Right.
And so sometimes that can be overwhelming, and you decide, I need to go make a fun movie for a while.
And that's why you're making a Christmas film to be released in a couple of years or a year or so?
Yeah, I've carried that story for years, and it was actually my friend and I experienced. We just took some blankets to some people at Christmas, and it evolved into a very large project, ongoing project. And so it changed those people's lives, and it changed our lives. And honestly, I was walking last summer, a year ago, and I kept hearing this little voice say, "Write it." And I was like, what haven't I written? I thought I've written everything that I can think of. And then it dawned on me I had not written this story, Chili for Christmas. And so sat down and we wrote the script in about 3 days, the first cut. And then, it's a fun story, but it's still emotional. It's very impactful. And we just hope that we've aligned ourselves with a nonprofit to be our fiscal sponsor, because the type of work that the particular nonprofit does is to empower the underserved in your community, and each person that might be a different scenario. For me, I live close by with a lot of elderly folks, and they have difficulty getting their medication or getting on the computer because they're not really computer, savvy when it comes to in their 80s. They're not an expert at, get online and you can solve your problem.
Right.
So for me, I see that as an underserved community. Mm-hmm. And somebody else, it would be, homeless folks. There's so many different things. If you just look, there's always somebody underserved in your community that you could help empower. Yeah. And so that's why they're making that film.
Oh, I can't wait for it to come out, and definitely have you back when it gets launched for sure. Darla, going back to, how many of us are just like, wow, filmmaking, how fun, how enjoyable of a career. Certainly the crew you work with and the people you come in contact with, you make friendships for life and you become kind of like family. But in terms of working on a particular film, what do you look for in the crew? What are some of the characteristics that you are your go-to for, this is going to be someone that I want to work on a project with?
Honestly, I'm a big proponent of loyalty, loyalty to the project, loyalty to one another. You want to make sure each person has the other person's back. Right. And there's a lot of times, it's not a case of like, I'm the director and producer, but I had an intern one time say, "Why are you carrying those cables?" And I'm like, "Because they need to be carried. Somebody needs some help." So if you see somebody on a set and they're reluctant and they don't want to help the other person, even though it's not their actual function, right? Those are the kinds of things I look for. And it's some of us we've worked together now for 20 years. in some cases a little bit more than 20 years. But everybody I work with, I've worked with for a long time. And, we just came back we've traveled to California to do interviews. We've been to Texas together. We've gone to a lot of different places. And, it's just this, it's a camaraderie that exists. Right. And I think for me, I was an athlete growing up, so that was something in sports too. And so that was just something instilled in me, and that's just what I look for.
Yeah, and it shows a lot of character too. And then to be a team, and to not be, well, I'm so high up, I can't help, or do this thing. To look at it more as a team, and when you're successful, I'm successful, and to have fun too, and to have that.
A blast.
Yeah, yeah.
We were just down in Texas, in Houston, and any day on set is better than any day sitting in a square office for me.
Right.
And people are like, oh, it's hot or it's cold or it's windy. I'm like, yes, but we're out here having fun.
Right.
I mean, we were having a good time. And, we were able to shoot some things, and kind of each time we tried to push the envelope to make our work better. And, we were doing some things like that this a couple weeks ago, which is part of the Christmas program. Christmas film is we're putting together a concept teaser trailer for some investors. And, we realized, oh, wow, we don't have to do anything this morning. We don't shoot until tonight. So we were like, okay, what can we do that is just crazy fun? And, so we took a trip to Galveston, and it was just, this was nice for us to do it as colleagues and friends.
Right.
That just reinforces your relationship.
Right. I love that. And so, Darla, what is the special sauce of what you do? I know each director, producer, they have their thing. They have the thing that sets them apart, and often people, can link films because, even if they didn't know who was directing it or producing it, they're like, yeah, I knew because I saw this common special sauce within the artistry, within the storytelling. What would yours be?
That's a good question. That's a hard question, actually. For me, it is about impacting people's lives. And when I did my first film, and I did a few screenings and Q&As, and I saw the impact to audiences, I want to make sure that thread goes through all of my films. There's an emotional thread, and for me, honestly, it's the music that I pick, I think, is always, that's one of our special sauces, and we have an incredible composer we work with, and usually we have an original song written for our films, and that would be something that people would start seeing, oh yeah, these guys pay attention to that.
Right.
And there's always that component that runs through all of our films. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And, I'm sure a lot of people look for your mentorship or your leadership or your advice in terms of filmmaking. If someone's listening who wants to get involved in films, either as a director or photog or whatever, what would be your advice in terms of how to get in the industry and then how to stay in the industry long lasting?
Well, I was always taught, do whatever you could to get on a set. And I started in the industry as an extra. And so somebody would say, well, would you like to do this? I remember being asked, well, we like you, and you're done being an extra for us. Do you want to do craft services? I didn't even know what craft services was.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, sure. If I could be on set and watch, I got my education watching on set. what happens. And because I also had been an extra and then I became an actor, back in the day, I'm old enough that, females never would have had a dream of being a writer, a director, or a producer. I mean, when I was growing up, basically it was like, oh, you could be an actor or a model as a female. That was it.
Yeah.
And so, I tell people all the time, you don't have to go to film school. I did not go to film school. My film school was actually my very first film,
Right.
role. And prior to that was being an extra, getting small little parts, doing things behind the scenes, doing makeup, things like that. If you think you want to act, do theater in school, in high school. I did theater. I did musical theater. But I think, surround yourself, get involved with groups like Women in Film. That's a national organization. There's those kinds of groups. There's also meetup groups now that never existed before, where people want to just talk about film and really learn about it from others like myself who've been doing it a long time.
Right.
Get a camera. Everybody can get a camera. I've seen films that have made on people's phones that are amazing. Right. Start just making, even if it's only for your own enjoyment, because you don't know where that might take you. Also, it is a business, and you need to have some business sense. A lot of times people, like I was reminded yesterday with a conversation from somebody out of Los Angeles who's actually a writer, and he said, well, you had the administrative side. I worked for 30-plus years in aerospace manufacturing, and my job was scheduling and budgets and things like that. Well, who knew those skills were going to translate over into being a producer and a director? Right. So don't ever discount life experience or any job along the way, because I look back now and so many people will ask me, well, how did you know to do that? Well, I had this job one time, that kind of thing. Right. And so you just never know what plays into it, honestly.
Right. Yeah. And so with your journey, Darla Rae, into the transition of going into filmmaking, being a producer and a director, how did you see God kind of show you the way and the path in that?
Well, when I did my first film, I've always had the dream to be in film. And my best friend, who I refer to as my sister, because she's actually was almost like a year difference in age from my mother. And she said to me one day, why aren't you making that film? And I said, well, I met somebody who was supposed to write the script, and they never did. She goes, yeah, but you've written scripts. I go, no, I've written skits for that were aligned with, like, our pastors or youth pastors' sermons. And she said, well, I think you could do it. And I thought, well, yeah, then what? I don't have any money. And she's like, well, she is really my spiritual mom, honestly. And she said, you're going to get $50,000 that you weren't expecting. Why don't you make the movie for that? And I thought, sure, okay. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to step out and see where it leads. And it was like God opened the door to an organization. It was about wheelchair rugby, spinal cord injuries, and my friend's son had broken his neck and announced he was going to play this game, wheelchair rugby. And then I met all these incredible athletes, and I thought, okay, I see where the story needs to be, And I'll be honest, I was supposed to make that film a year prior to the year I made it, but my mom got sick. And we were actually going to start shooting the next week. And people were really angry at me because I said, I'm sorry, I got to shut it down and go take care of my mother. And so a come back a year later, and I can honestly tell you that film, had we done it the year before, it would not have been the same film.
Right.
It would not have done it because it was God's timing, and I will tell you that film went around the world and won all kinds of crazy awards, and it was released in blockbusters. And who does that with their first film?
Right.
It wasn't me. All these doors opened that we know it was a God thing. And even to this day, I've had people. That film is still playing, we shot it on mini DV tape, so it's not even high def. It's horrible looking, in my opinion. But a lot of people thought it was shot on film because it is sort of grainy. But I can tell you that film did things that nobody expected, and people ask me to this day, well, how did it end up in Mumbai, and how did it go to Milan, Italy? I went, God, because that was never planned. I mean, what's the odds? You're at a film festival in Temecula, California, and a gentleman from India follows you out to your rental car in the parking lot and says, I'm from Mumbai and I want to put your film in the festival. And I thought, okay, sure. I thought, nothing will ever happen here. I'll sign that contract and give you a DVD. And so next thing you know, that won in Mumbai, and then it went to Milan. And,
wow.
So, and there's been those kinds of things happen with each film. And people say, wow, did you know that was going to happen? No. Nope. Wasn't planned. And I always tell people, I always know the crazier it sounds and the more it comes out of left field, that for me, it's always a God thing.
Right. That's beautiful.
That's my barometer, I mean, that's how I measure it. I go, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And then, too, onlookers who don't know the Lord can see your testimony just through what He's gifted you to do, and through your life and just your humility, and your openness to just kind of go with the adventure.
Oh, it is always an adventure, and I know you always feel like you're climbing Mount Everest. I don't ever need to go climb Mount Everest because I do it every time we're making a film. And people don't see the obstacles, and it's like they don't see when you're on the floor crying in the corner going, oh, what am I doing this for? And then it's like, oh, okay, now I got it. It's kind of like that. There's a meme out there that's like, why God, why? I don't get it. I don't understand it. And then later on you're like, oh, now I know why that wasn't happening over here.
Right. Yeah, we have these life experiences, and obviously you've lived them over and over where, there's that challenge, you're climbing the mountain, but then after the fact, you're like, oh, okay. And he puts us through another one of those. So it's a lifelong thing.
Yeah, and, I always look back. I was just thinking, I said to somebody, look, I'm 66. I made my first film when I was like 45, turning 46. My first directorial producing debut kind of thing was a goal. And some things are easier and some things are the same. It's always the mountain, climbing over that mountain and that obstacle. But I have no fear in calling up and asking. I was negotiating with, an actress's, Jane Seymour's agency, and they weren't getting back to me, and I'm like, well, okay, that's not the one then. So I called somebody else, and I said, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of your mom, and the agency's not responding, and they were like, hold on, let me call my mom. And, the mom is Dee Wallace. So Dee Wallace was the mom in E.T., and she narrated our documentary, Courageous Warriors, Beauty from the Ashes. And as it turned out, she was the right person, and it was a God thing from the standpoint of growing up. Her mom started a nonprofit to help people who was going through cancer treatments. And that was a very core element within the body of our film. And so that's why she said, I'm doing it for my mommy. You're doing this film for your mommy because my mom passed away from breast cancer. So that, for me, I'm like, see, that's how you know.
Right.
Those things happen all the time with each film.
Yeah. Wow, Darla Rae, you're definitely living that adventure in your career and the thing that you love to do, and then in Christ as well. How can our listeners get a hold of you, learn more about your films, connect with you?
Well, I have Filmit Productions, filmitproductions7@gmail is my email. And then, but I have Filmit Productions website, and then I have sort of started this the last year. Actually, it started with Courageous Warriors, Beauty from the Ashes, but I have a sidearm in my company, and it is the Courageous Warriors Project, because we realized, looking at all of our films, we're telling the stories of real life courageous warriors.
Right.
And so they can go to that website and check out what we're doing, and like we work a lot with nonprofits to raise awareness for their nonprofits, and usually they're tied to either a disability or some kind of medical condition. So we do a large portion of what we do. That's why we have that side of the business.
Wow. Well, Darla Rae, thank you for all the things that you are doing. Thank you also for being a friend of the Corner Cafe. And of course, we're going to have you back on the show, and it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy my time at the Corner Cafe.
Well, thanks listeners for tuning in, and we're going to be with you at the Corner Cafe next week.